Hello everyone and welcome back for some more Drag Race gossip, secrets and drama. So I'm back for another Have Your Say video, and this is for season 16 episode 6. And today we're going to be recapping the episode, looking at the results of the Have Your Say poll where you get to vote if you agree with the episode, and also some drama between Dax ExclamationPoint calling out Maddy Morphosis, and also why this pit crew member won't be returning to the show. All that and more coming up in today's video, so let's get started. Okay, so we'll start by recapping the episode. So the queens came back into the workroom after the shocking elimination of a mandatory meeting. And the queens talked about in the last episode they had to say a name of a queen when Ru asked who should go home tonight and why. And Xunami was annoyed that Q had picked her as well as Amanda, so she had picked two names. And Q couldn't really understand why Xunami was mad. Although Xunami said that she was going to take the criticism and see if there was anything she could learn from it. They also asked Plain Jane who she was going to pick on now that Amanda is gone, and Plain said that she's turning over a new leaf, but the other queens don't really seem to believe her. The next day the queens do a mini challenge and Charo is the guest judge, and the queens have to do a flamenco style dance with two dancers. And I thought it was a really fun mini challenge, and it looked like it was probably really difficult to do that without any rehearsal, so I actually thought the queens were really impressive. Xunami Muse then won the mini challenge, and as the prize she won a trip to Spain. And what I thought you might find interesting is that I saw on Twitter that after the episode aired, Xunami tweeted saying that as we know, she has DACA status in the US, which stands for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. And this is an immigration policy that protects children from being deported. And Xunami had talked about this in a previous episode. But Xunami tweeted after the episode saying that because of her DACA status, she's not allowed to leave the US, so she can't go to Spain. And apparently the show did offer her $5,000 instead. However, Xunami tweeted saying that she's decided that she wanted to gift the trip to Spain to the first eliminated queen of the season, Hershey LaCour-Jeté, and Hershey didn't seem to know anything about it, and it was a real surprise. And I thought this was a really sweet thing for Xunami to do. But back to the episode, and the queens find out that the Maxi challenge for this week is that they have to design an outfit for a doll using the fabric provided, and they also have to make a matching outfit for themselves. So this is yet another design challenge. And as you would expect, some queens are more excited for this than others. Nymphia is pretending that she doesn't know what she's doing and she's really stressed out, but we can see that the queens don't really believe her. And this is because in previous episodes, Nymphia said that she can't really do stuff, but then she ends up being really good at it. And it looks like the other queens now just don't really believe her. We also see that Sapphira helps Maya a lot with her outfit and is spending so much time with Maya that they're trying to imply that maybe Sapphira is neglecting her own outfit. And Plain Jane even says that she thinks that Sapphira might be in trouble this week and may need to use her immunity potion. And there is clearly some foreshadowing going on here, which we'll see later in the episode. We also see that Geneva originally had some red fabric she wanted to use and she wouldn't let Plain have it. But then Geneva realised that she didn't have enough of the red fabric, so she switched to this blue fabric. Even though Plain and Plasma were also using the same colour, which again is some nice foreshadowing that we'll see again later in the episode. Moving on to the runway, and we find out that the guest judge for this week is Roach, who is a famous fashion stylist. And he was also a judge on the reality TV show Legendary, which is a voguing competition show, and some Drag Race alums have competed on the show, such as Aja. And Roach has become quite well known for giving people tough love, and also sometimes giving quite blunt critiques. Moving on to the runways, and as usual, I won't be critiquing the actual fashion because it's just not my thing, but someone in the comments last week did suggest that maybe I should choose my favourite outfit of them, so I will. Okay, so first of all we had Xunami Muse, and her doll was the Fashion Week edition. Then we had Sapphira Cristál, and her doll was the Grande Dame Diva Metropolitan Opera edition. Next we had Plasma, and her doll was the Passenger on the Pacific edition. Then we had Plain Jane, and her doll was the Aquatic edition. Next we had Nymphia Wind, and her doll was the Spring Banana Yellow Carpet edition. Then we had Morphine Love Dion, and her doll was the Miami Bimbo edition. Then we had Maya Iman LePage, and her doll was the Queen of Flips edition. Next we had Megami, and her doll was the Native New Yorker edition. Then we had Geneva Carr, and her doll was the Daintiest Doll Texas edition. Next we had Dawn, and her doll was the Galactic Empress edition. And finally we had Q with the Fantasy edition. And personally, my favourite of these looks was Q's. It was just so well made and there was just so many details on it. And it's kind of crazy to think that Q managed to create that sort of outfit in such a small amount of time. And I also thought that it was really smart that Q chose a colour that no one else was using, so she really stood out. And I would also like to give a shout out to Megami's outfit, because I felt that it didn't really get that much attention, but I personally really loved it and thought that the sparkly blue material looked really good on camera, and I also thought the outfit just looked really clean and chic in general. But let me know in the comments which of the outfits was your favourite. So moving on to the judges' critiques, and RuPaul asked if either Sapphira or Plain Jane want to use their immunity potions, and Plain says no, but shockingly, Sapphira said yes. And all the other contestants were also gagged, and you could tell that Sapphira regretted doing it as soon as she said yes, because she also saw that the judges were also shocked. And I was really surprised watching this. I thought Sapphira's outfit was perhaps not the best, but it was definitely a safe outfit. And looking at the episode, I think perhaps Sapphira just got in her head a little bit, and maybe Plain Jane's comment earlier in the workroom maybe made Sapphira overthink her position a bit. And it was really unfortunate because now Sapphira has used her potion, so she's obviously not going to have immunity again. But it was something interesting, and it was obviously the first time that anyone's ever used their immunity potion. So we find out that the tops for this week are Plain Jane, Q and Dawn, with Q ultimately taking the win. And in the bottom we have Plasma, Maya and Geneva. Maya and Geneva are ultimately picked as the bottom two and have to lip sync, and Geneva is unfortunately told to sashay away. And I saw an interesting post on social media the other day that said that Geneva has actually lip synced in every episode that she's been on Drag Race. And this is because in the first week she was in the top, so she lip synced for the win. And then in every other episode she was in the bottom and had to lip sync for her life, except for last week when her team won, but because it was the girl group it was still a sort of lip sync. So that leads us on nicely to the Have Your Say poll, so I'll go through the results where you voted on whether you agree with this week's episode. So question 1 was, do you agree with the outcome of this week's episode, i.e. the tops, bottoms and elimination? And 82.7% said yes and 17.3% said no, so clearly the vast majority of people did agree with the outcome. And I think looking at it, Geneva and Maya did get the worst critiques and they probably have not so great track records, so I can kind of see why this was quite an easy week to judge. Question 2 was, in your opinion, who should have won this week? And unsurprisingly, we had 79.1% for Q. And I do think Q's outfit was absolutely stunning. As I said, it was my favourite of the week and it was also the outfit that won, so this isn't really that much of a surprise. We then had Dawn with 11.4, which again is not that surprising because Dawn was also in the top. We also had Nymphia Wind, which was interesting because she wasn't actually in the top 3, but her outfit was amazing. And then we had Plain Jane with 3.3, and that's interesting because Plain was in the top 3 according to the judges' critiques, so it's interesting to see that people on this vote at least think that Nymphia did better than Plain, which is kind of the opposite to what the judges said. For question 3 we had, in your opinion, who should have been eliminated this week? And with 88.6% we had Geneva Carr. And again, I do think, unfortunately, although I did really like Geneva, she did have the worst track record and I don't think she did particularly well in this week. So I think this was quite an obvious choice this week, unfortunately. And then we had Maya Iman LePage with 6.4%, and again that does make sense because she was also in the bottom this week. And then interestingly we had 1.2% for Xunami Muse. And I think this is interesting because technically Plasma was in the bottom 3 according to the judges' critiques, but it looks like people in this vote are saying that they thought Xunami should have been in her place. Next we had question 4, and that was, in your opinion, who was the best in the challenge this week? And again, this is a similar result, so we have Q with 70.9%, then we have Dawn with 11.9%, and then we have Plain Jane with 6.5% and Nymphia Wind with 6.4%, which is interesting because that's actually slightly different to the other vote which actually put Nymphia above Plain, although there's only 0.1 percentage difference. And we also had Megami at 1.6%, and I do agree because I actually thought Megami's look deserved a bit more attention. Question 5 was, in your opinion, who had the best runway look this week? And this week obviously was a design challenge, so this question is kind of the same as the last question because the runway was the challenge. But we had Q with 74.4%, unsurprisingly. Then we had Nymphia Wind with 9.9%, and then Dawn with 9.8%, and then Plain Jane with 3.5%. And then finally, question 6 was, in your opinion, who is the front runner so far of the season, i.e. most likely to win? And with 69.3% we have Nymphia Wind. I think Nymphia has been at the top pretty much every single week we've done these polls, and I don't think this is that much of a surprise. Nymphia has been in the top of pretty much all of these polls, and I can see why. She's an incredible contestant, very talented, she's good at everything, so I do think that Nymphia is clearly going to be a force to be reckoned with in this season. Then we had Sapphira Cristál with 10.8%. And again, I think this is very interesting because although Sapphira didn't necessarily have the best time in this particular episode, I think so far Sapphira has been an incredible contestant, and I do think she's going to go very far. And then in second place, surprisingly, we had 11.1% with Plain Jane. And I do think this is interesting because people seem to be quite split on Plain Jane, and so far in these polls, Plain Jane hasn't always ranked that highly for this particular question. But because Plain Jane has done so well, I think in all the other episodes, and also this one included, it looks like people are now thinking that she's going to be someone who might even potentially win the season. And then we had Dawn with 1.9%, and again, this makes sense because Dawn has done really well in every week. Okay, so moving on to the comments this week, and there were lots and lots of comments, so unfortunately I can't read all of them, but I picked out just a few that seem to kind of encapsulate what most people were saying. So one of my Patreons named Shelby, hi Shelby, said, was surprised Nymphia wasn't in the top with her gorgeous, sheer and sparkly runway look. And bummed Sapphira got stuck in her own head and chugged the potion. I thought she looked beautiful. And I think this is a common thing. People were saying that Nymphia should have been in the top, or at least a lot higher than she was. And I do agree, her outfit was really stunning, and it's crazy to think that she managed to make that after seemingly being so stressed and saying that she didn't know what to do. And I do agree that Sapphira drinking the potion was a real shame because I don't think she needed to at all. Her look was clearly safe and I didn't think it was bad at all. But I guess you could say that it added some sort of intrigue or drama to the episode. And speaking of Sapphira, there was actually one interesting comment where someone said that they think that Sapphira may have used her immunity potion for storyline, and so she can make it to the end of the season and wants production to shift focus back to her. And this is a really interesting concept. I guess as we've seen, Plain Jane and the drama surrounding her has really been the focal point of the season. So although I'm not sure if Sapphira would actually do this, it is an interesting theory that perhaps she's doing this to try and pull the focus back to her and also give her a kind of storyline in this episode. And it certainly did work because in this episode, Plain Jane was not really featured that much other than that she was in the top. So either Plain Jane really is entering her kind of congenial era and she's turning over a new leaf, or maybe the whole thing with Sapphira taking the potion did actually work and it pulled focus back to her. Let me know in the comments what you thought about this. There were also quite a few comments saying that people didn't really like Xunami's look that much and thought that she should have not been safe and should have probably been at least in the bottom 3. And then there was also one really interesting comment, and this actually did come up in the Roscoe's recap for this week, so make sure you check that out once it comes out. But someone said, queens like Megami and Maya and Geneva were sort of screwed over by production by not giving the girls any plus-size dolls. I didn't understand the critique that Geneva got about how the doll had RuPaul legs and she had Danny DeVito legs, as if she could carve her legs down with a chisel. And this is definitely an interesting point. I did think it was slightly strange that the dolls were all just one size and the queens are obviously not. So let me know in the comments what you think about this and whether you think that the other queens had an advantage over the plus size queens because of this. Okay, so now moving on to some drama for this week that was unrelated to season 16. So you may have remembered last week I did talk about the fact that Maddy Morphosis was on the pit stop and had this really big wig, and she made a kind of funny dig at Bob the drag queen, and then she and Bob wrote diss tracks about each other and it kind of went viral. Well, it looks like there was some more drama that involved Maddy and this wig from the pit stop, but this time it was about Dax ExclamationPoint calling out Maddy. Dax competed on season 8 of Drag Race US, and you may remember that she was part of the double elimination with Layla McQueen in episode 2. Since competing on season 8, Dax has focused more on cosplay and has distanced herself from Drag Race and has said in the past that she no longer wants to be associated with the show. However, Dax recently made some critical comments about Maddy on Twitter which sparked a lot of attention. So how it started was that Dax tweeted a photo of Maddy from the pit stop and said, "Only because I choose violence for the sake of education, when I say queens are out here paying too much for custom wigs they can't maintain, this is what I mean. Also, just to be nice, I'm not going to bring up this shoe choice or dress or lack of cosmetics." Dax then followed this up by saying, "Like, imagine for a second I chose to show up like this, I'd be spending years after trying to prove my validity to the internet." And some Twitter users responded to Dax and said that the first thing they'd heard from Dax in a long time since season 8 was her being hateful to another Drag Race queen. And Dax has said that she has been more than vocal for the past 8 years. And another Twitter user said that Maddy had explained at the end of the pit stop that the wig was intentionally bad. To which Dax said, "So you had to get to the absolute end for it all to come full circle? Cool, that's fine if you're into it. Not what I would consider a good teaser though." Another Twitter user then said that Dax must be bothered because she was replying to every single reply to her tweet. And Dax said, "No, I'm not bothered, I'm bothered by the reaction. I'm bothered that it's Black History Month and people who never showed up for me before came out of the woodwork to tell me how wrong I am. I'm bothered at the level of drag black performers are held to, but this is defended." There were also lots of other tweets and replies that Dax responded to, with people saying that Dax was being heterophobic. Dax also tweeted several other comments about this, and she also tweeted some photos of other performers wearing big wigs and said, "As a note, these are camp." A Twitter user then said to Dax that she just needed to admit that she didn't like Maddy, and Dax did. And people were asking Dax what the difference is between her wigs and Maddy's wigs, and Dax said, "'Cause of attention to detail, structure, respect, and overall artistic integrity and craftsmanship." There was then another tweet where someone asked Dax where on the doll that Maddy hurt her, and Dax said, "Colonialism." And people then replied to Dax saying that Maddy is Native American. And just in case you don't know, Maddy said during her recent interview with Aja on her YouTube channel Give It To Me Straight that she is half Native American because her dad is Native American. But Maddy said that she actually looks more like her mum. Some people in the comments then criticised Dax and said that she shouldn't tweet about Drag Race if she doesn't want to be associated with the franchise anymore. And Dax said, "The past few days are exactly why I want nothing to do with Drag Race. If you're here because of that, you can 100% unfollow me. I'm never doing All Stars, you'll never see me at DragCon. I'm blacklisted anyway." I'm not 100% sure what Dax meant when she said that she was, quote, blacklisted from Drag Race. However, it may be referring to the fact that Dax has made several critical comments about Drag Race over the years, as well as RuPaul and Michelle. For example, in January of 2023, Dax wrote on Instagram about Ru and Michelle and said that they should be doing more to speak up about trans genocide in America. And Dax also said that RuPaul didn't care and continues to do fracking. Also, back in 2019, Dax had posted on Instagram saying that Drag Race was over and that the show was, quote, pandering to straight people in order to increase viewership. Anyway, back to current times, and a Twitter user replied to Dax's post about wanting nothing to do with Drag Race and said that Dax shouldn't have said that she, quote, chose violence if she didn't want to get violence back from people in return. And Dax said, "Okay, let me send you death threats on other platforms then. Also, loafing around, I gave this bleep 2 days to calm down, and then you're telling me it's my fault." Dax also said that she's been very vocal about being a depressed person and that she's had a swarm of people coming after her and sending her hate and death threats. Another Twitter user then asked if Dax had actually watched the pit stop, and Dax said, "I don't support or endorse the RuPaul industrial complex. My feed is just so full of it no matter what I do. I see so much amazing drag and beautiful work, but then I'm inundated with this and I can't handle it." Someone else then said that Dax just doesn't get Maddy, but Dax said Maddy was taking up the place of a legitimate queer person in the media. And Dax also questioned whether it was a straight person capitalising off queer media. Dax also said the reason she tweeted about it in the first place is because people on her timeline were praising Maddy's look, and Dax just wanted to say that she did not think it was a good look. And there were lots of other tweets and replies, but I won't read them all because there were so many. And some of the comments from Twitter users were also very extreme. And Maddy also does not seem to have responded to this in any way. And Dax has also not tweeted about this anymore since then. And as I always say in my videos, regardless of whether you agree with the queens and what they're saying, it's never okay to send death threats and hate to people. If you don't like what someone is saying, you can just unfollow or block them, but please don't send hate to anyone, just enjoy this video passively. And now moving on to a little bit of drama that I saw on Twitter to do with a pit crew member not returning to Drag Race. So what happened is that the YouTube channel Green Gay tweeted a photo of a pit crew member who is named Wilson Lai from an episode of All Stars 4, and Green Gay asked when we could expect to see Wilson back on Drag Race, because Wilson has only appeared a couple of times on the show. Wilson then responded to the tweet and said that someone else had made him aware of Green Gay's tweet, and Wilson then posted several photos with written text giving some information about the situation and clearing up some speculation. In the photos, Wilson said that he was never a core part of the pit crew and was never offered a contract. He also said that he thinks the show's budget for the pit crew is not very high. Wilson also said he doubts he'll ever be brought back to Drag Race because he had been previously contacted by a producer, but because Wilson was so busy and stressed at the time, he didn't respond. But Wilson said he's not sure he would ever want to go back to Drag Race anyway, because after his appearance he got a lot of hate from people online, and people started to stalk him and also his friends and his boyfriend, and then they would quote trash them, which was really hurtful. And Wilson also said that the pay was not high enough to make it worth going through all of this, and that the fans have been very, quote, toxic. Wilson said that he got criticised a lot because he didn't smile when he was on the show, but Wilson said that he was a massive fan of the show for so long, and he was really nervous when he was on, and he was always taught to look very professional and sexy when he's modelling, and he also was told not to, quote, fanboy too much, which is why he deliberately didn't show that much emotion. Green Gay thanked Wilson for the information, and Wilson added a bit more information after that, and said that he was accused of having no personality after being on Drag Race. And Wilson said that it was ironic that people were accusing him of having no personality when a lot of the people who were attacking him based their whole personalities around Drag Race and misogyny. And Wilson finished by saying that he had been asked to help cast other pit crew members, and he had recruited other Asian and also trans pit crew members, and they filmed a mini challenge segment for season 12, but it unfortunately got cut because of Sherry Pie. And Wilson said he didn't get paid any extra even though he helped to recruit all of these extra pit crew members. And he also said that Drag Race would schedule things at the last minute, which made it difficult for him to plan things. And I thought that this was just really interesting because we rarely hear backstage information about the pit crew members. And I thought that this was a really interesting insight into how the pit crew members work, and also why Wilson has not come back to Drag Race since then. And Wilson brought up a really good point about hate online. Just remember that it's never okay to be hateful to someone online, and if you don't have anything nice to say, it's just better not to say it at all. So there you go, there was my Have Your Say video for Season 16 Episode 6. Let me know in the comments if you agree with the outcome of this week's episode. And also let me know who you think is most likely to win the season and whether you're rooting for that person or if you're rooting for someone else. And I just want to take this moment to say thank you so much to my incredible Patreon members. In the You're a Winner Baby tier we have Christian, Emerald1508, Ethan, Lisa, PC Smush and Rochelle. And then in the Shantae You Stay tier we have Amy, Becky, Charlie, David, Linda, Shelby and Craig. Thank you so much. I really do love my Patreon community. You're all such great supporters and it really does make such a massive difference to my channel, so thank you all so much. And if you'd like to get early access to my videos such as this one, as well as a raft of other benefits, please consider joining my Patreon and supporting my channel, and I'll put a link in the description. Please make sure you like, comment and share this video as it really helps support my channel. And of course, please make sure you hit the subscribe button to stay up to date about new uploads. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you'll join me again in future videos. Thank you, bye!